One of the things about war, and this is what von Clausewitz says in his book on war, is that war escalates. It's the nature of war to escalate. It gets out of control. If you look at World War I, and World War I has actually never ended. Seriously, these are just extensions of World War I. David Fromkin wrote the book, The Peace to End All Peace. World War I's never ended. Because without, what they did at the end of that war, they promised the Germans a peace without victors, and then they punished them brutally, which gave the rise to Hitler, which then creates Palestine, this huge problem in the Middle East that's still affecting us, and globally now, the whole world. It's all related. And that's why, you cannot avoid the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. None of us. You can't avoid it. Because, two things. One, it's the meeting place of the North and the South. So it's where this civilization of luxury meets a civilization of deprivation. And they're right there. Like here, it's all hidden away from us. So if you live in Los Gatos, you don't really have to go down into the Tenderloin. You might have to, for whatever reason, see a little bit of it, see the homelessness, see the horrors, go under the bridges and see what's going on. But overall, a lot of it's just hidden from us. This culture is very good. It's like garbage. They hide it really well. Like we don't think about landfills, but I guarantee you cannot keep filling these garbage cans every week with all of this stuff and millions of people doing this. Like at what point? Because civilizations actually do, and this is ancient, civilizations will literally end up drowning in their own, garbage that they created. But that's where it meets, and that's why in his amazing book, and I just read his book, Humpty Dumpty, on regime change, because I think William Polk is one of the most important writers, and unfortunately I really regret not having met him, because he's somebody I would have really, really liked to have met, because brilliant man, incredible knowledge. He had been one of the three that was in the crisis committee during when Kennedy was dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis. He also negotiated the peace in Algeria because Kennedy was very supportive of the Algerians. He was actually voted in, as a junior senator, he voted in the Senate not to send weapons to France when they were fighting the Algerians, right, during the war in Algeria, which lasted 10 years and killed 1 million Algerians. Horrific war. And he also gave Ben Bella a huge reception when he came to the United States, because there was kind of a hopeful time of, when America actually had a relatively decent reputation in a lot of places before it's been completely just destroyed. In any case, he wrote this book, Crusade and Jihad, the 1,000-Year War between the global North and the Muslim South. And when you look at this, a lot of this is about, even Caleb Carr in his book, Lessons from the History of Terror, says that this is boiling down to this global capitalistic system and fundamentalist Islam. And he said this is a disastrous for our species to have these two at each other's throats, which is happening right now. So, but he does say in that book that it's the last chapter. It boils down like this issue is not going to go away, and he considers it the central issue, Palestine and Israel. And until that's solved, it's going to be just a lot of what we're seeing. And this, in the end of the day, a lot of this is about just something that was done 100 years ago. At least it began 100 years ago. Actually more now, it's almost like 120 years. And the first Aliyah begins in the 1880s. The Ottomans were kind of pressured by the Europeans to start the migration, but by 1936, it's just boiled over and the Arabs rebelled and lost. Brutal. What the British did was just brutal. Brutal. So this is a poem called The Bonfire, one of my favorite poets. Oh, let's go up to the hill and scare ourselves, as reckless as the best of them tonight, by setting fire to all the brush we piled, with pitchy hands to wait for rain or snow. Oh, let's not wait for rain to make it safe. The pile is ours. We dragged it bough on bough, down dark converging paths between the pines. Let's not care what we do with it tonight. Divide it? No. But burn it as one pile, the way we piled it. And let's be the talk of people brought to windows by a light, thrown from somewhere against their wallpaper. Rouse them all, both the free and not so free, with saying what they'd like to do to us, for what they'd better wait till we have done. Let's all but bring to life this old volcano, if that is what the mountain ever was, and scare ourselves. Let the wildfire loose. And scare you too, the children said together. Why wouldn't it scare me to have a fire? Begin in smudge with ropey smoke, and know that still if I repent I may recall it, but in a moment not, a little spurt of burning fatness, and then nothing but the fire itself can put it out. And that by burning out, and before it burns out, it will have roared first and mixed sparks with stars, and sweeping round it with a flaming sword, made the dim trees stand back in wider circle, done so much that I know not how much more. I mean, it shall not do if I can bind it. Well, if it doesn't, with its draft bring on a wind to blow in earnest from some quarter, as once it did with me upon an April. The breezes were so spent with winter blowing, they seemed to fail, the bluebirds under them. Short of the perch their languid flight was toward, and my flame made a pinnacle to heaven as I walked round it in possession. But the wind out of doors, you know the saying, there came a gust. You used to think the trees made wind by fanning, since you never knew. And they used to believe that the trees actually created wind. It blow, but that you saw the trees in motion. Something or someone watching made that gust. It put the flame tip down and dabbed the grass of overwinter with the least tip touch. Your tongue gives salt or sugar in your hand. The place it reached to blacken instantly. The black was all there was by daylight. That and the merest curl of cigarette smoke, and a flame slender as the hepaticus. Blood, root, and violet so soon to be now. The black spread like black death on the ground. I think the sky darkened with a cloud like winter and evening coming on together. There were enough things to be thought of then, where the field stretches toward the north, and setting sun to Hyla Brook, I gave it to flames without twice thinking, where it verges upon the road, to flames too, though in fear, they might find fuel there in withered brake, grass its full length, old silver golden rod, and alder and grapevine entanglement. To leap the dusty deadline for my own, I took what front there was beside. I knelt and thrust hands in and held my face away. Fight such a fire by rubbing, not by beating. A board is the best weapon if you have it. I had my coat, and oh, I knew, and said it out loud. I couldn't bide the smother and heat so close in, but the thought of all the woods and town on fire by me, and all the town turned out to fight for me, that held me. I trusted the brook barrier, but feared the road would fail. And on that side the fire died not without a noise of crackling wood, of something more than tinder grass and weed, that brought me to my feet to hold it back by leaning back myself as if the reins were round my head and I was at the plow. I won, but I'm sure no one ever spread another color over a tenth the space that I spread coal black over in the time it took me. Neighbors coming home from town couldn't believe that so much black had come there while they had backs turned. And if it hadn't been there when they passed an hour or so before, going the other way, and they not seen it, they looked about for someone to have done it, but there was no one. I was somewhere wondering where all my weariness had gone and why I walked so light on air in heavy shoes in spite of a scorched 4th of July feeling. Wouldn't I be scared remembering that? If it scares you, what will it do to us? Scare you. But if you shrink from being scared, what would you say to war if it should come? That's what for reasons I should like to know, if you can comfort me by any answer. Oh, but wars are not for children. It's for men. Now we are digging almost down to China. My dears, you thought that. We all thought it. So your mistake was ours. Haven't you heard, though, about the ships where war has found them out at sea, about the towns where war has come through opening clouds at night with droning speed, further o'erhead than all but stars and angels, and children in the ships and in the towns? Haven't you heard what we have lived to learn? Nothing so new, something we had forgotten. War is for everyone, for children too. I wasn't going to tell you, and I mustn't. The best way is to come up the hill with me and have our fire and laugh and be afraid. So that's starting something you can't stop. Yeah, war's not for children. That's a lie. The first victims of this war were over 100 little children. Anyway, so the disintegration of civilizations, how they collapse, that's what I'm thinking about, as we watch. And that's what we're left to do in some ways, is watch. Santayana said that if you don't learn the lessons of history, you're condemned to repeat them. But it's a lie. Because even if you learn them, because I have learned them and I've studied them, you just have to watch other people repeating them. Right? Because they know. See, because I read this Humpty Dumpty, and William Polk, who was a really brilliant historian, but he'd been in the Tower he'd been both. He'd been in the Tower and the Forum. He was somebody who was actively engaged in the world. He'd been a policymaker. He studied Iran very deeply. He knew Persian, he knew Arabic. He taught in Baghdad and Cairo. He really appreciated Muslim peoples, because these people, they haven't traveled. And if they did, they stay in the Sheraton, or they stay in the Ritz-Carlton. They don't go down with the people. I've been in huts. We were in Mauritania once, and I was with Abdurrahim and Ibrahim al-Siafo, Shaykh Ibrahim. He's a sheikh now. He studied there for a while, and then he went to Hadramaut. He's an amazing man, and he's done a lot in England. He started a school there. But we went, and as we were leaving, Murabt Ahmed Fad, may Allah have mercy on him, he said to us, when you get to Isbir, which means be patient, when you get to Isbir, you might have some trouble. And I'm not making this up, but there's a lot of witnesses to this. Sheikh Khatri was with us, Abdurrahim was with us, Ibrahim al-Siafo was with us. He said, you might have some trouble. If you do, just go right, and if you keep walking, you'll come across some khiyam, some people there, the tents. And you can stay there. And as God's my witness, we literally got to the sign in the middle of the Sahara Desert. I don't know who put these signs up, but it said Isbir. And the car got stuck. It was raining and it got stuck in mud. Just sunk. And we couldn't get it out. And everybody laughed. And Sheikh Khatri said, هذا كشف من مربط أحمد فهد. Just, And so he said, what did he tell us to do? So we just walked, and we came on these shepherds. And it was a really windy night. It was raining. And they killed a sheep for us. And so we went to sleep, and this man was holding the tent up so it wouldn't fall on us. because it has the rakiza, there's amud, you know. And he was holding up. When we woke up about 3 or 4 hours later, he was still standing there holding it. Like, those are human beings. So you think about these people that are under aerial bombardment, which is a horrific thing. You know, the first aerial bombardment was done by the Italians on the Libyan Bedouin, just to see how it worked. And the next one was on the Moroccans, Spanish, Muslims. They don't really count. Anyway, I was thinking about the Iranians, and the Iranians, they play chess. They're not like tic-tac-toe people. And this is one of their books, This was probably one of the most read books in human history. And there were many translations into English, and it just disappeared. Nobody even knows this book anymore, with rare exception. I've asked a lot of educated people. Have you ever read Kalina and Dimna? What's that? But this was one of the most read books. It's the first translation into Arabic of a prose work that actually becomes considered a masterpiece by Ibn al-Muqaffa, the great Persian translator. Somebody asked him what his favorite language was, because he's Persian. He said, الذي فاتني من النسب ما فاتني من العقل أفضل أن أذم بالعربية من أن أمدح بالفارسية. He said, what I lost in lineage, I didn't lose in intelligence. I would rather be criticized in Arabic than praised in Persian. Anyway, he translated this. So there's a story in there about, a lion. He's very ferocious, and he comes and he starts killing all the animals. So the animals, they're fed up, and so they basically go and they tell him, listen, let's make a deal. We'll provide you one every day, and just leave the rest of us alone. So the lion doesn't have to hunt. He agrees to that, because lions are very lazy animals. So he agrees to that. So every day they bring somebody to get the lion, feed. So the rabbit is always clever, in animal tradition. Even here we have Brower rabbit, in the South. So the rabbit's turn comes, and he doesn't like the idea of being lunch for the lion. So he tells one of them, he says, listen, I think I have a plan. We can deal with this. So he says, go and tell the lion I'm going to be late. So he goes and he tells him. The lion gets very angry. When he finally shows up, he's like, how dare you be late? He said, no, I was actually bringing the rabbit for you, and the other lion, he ate it. The lion, what other lion? He said, the other lion, there's another lion. He said, no, I'm the king of the jungle. He said, no, he's there. And I told him, you're the king. And I said, this is your lunch, not his. He said, well, I'll eat it, and he can, do whatever he wants to do. And he said, show me where this lion is. He said, I know where he's hiding. So he takes him to the well. He said, he's in there. So the lion looks in, and he sees his reflection. And the rabbit sticks over the well, so he sees the rabbit. And so the lion thinks that his rabbit is there. He said, see, there's your rabbit. And so the lion jumps in and drowns. And that's a lesson about getting sucked into traps and things like that. So, but we have to pray for peace, because this is not good for anybody. We don't want to see. We live here. These are our people. We live amongst these people. This is where I'm from. I don't want to see. I want to see good for these people. And And where people, the Prophet ﷺ, I mentioned at the outset of this, he was somebody who really cared about people, human beings. He was not somebody that he did not have the spirit of revenge. And the biggest proof of that is Fathu Mecca. And he made dua for his people. Even when at the worst of what they were doing to him, he made dua for them. But we don't, we know the vast majority of people have nothing to do with these aggressions. But the people that do, they will be responsible. And there is a just Lord. You cannot, you just can't kill innocent people like this. It's just wrong. And you don't have to take sides on these things just to recognize it's just wrong to kill children. It's wrong to kill innocent civilians. You don't need to be political or have a position. You don't have to be pro-Hamas to recognize that what was done to that civilian population was utter cruelty beyond, even what I can imagine human beings doing. To do something like that, and gleefully, and to post it on your. Who does that? What kind of people do that? I don't know. And the same would be true for people rejoicing in civilians or innocent people getting killed on the other side. It's the same thing. It has to go both ways. If you're a human being. One of the Christians, St. Anthony, he said, if you cry out the oppressor and don't make prayer for him, the Prophet he made dua for his people. Allahumma aghfir qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. And he mentioned a prophet covered in blood saying, Allahumma aghfir qawmi li'annahum la ya'lamun. He cared about his people. He didn't want to see them. If you want people to go to hell, you know nothing about hell. If you don't want Tawbah for people, you know nothing about hell. But he said, you know nothing about the grace of God. You want God to forgive you, but you don't care about other people and have a concern for other people's forgiveness? Kama tadinu tudanu. I mean, the Prophet said that. Jesus said that. As you judge, so you too shall be judged. Kama tadinu tudanu. That's what that means. So, I don't like to see human suffering. And people here, it's very easy to be pro-war when you're not under aerial bombardment. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Sven Lindquist wrote a book called The History of Aerial Bombardment. And he actually says in that book that the first rules of war were from the Muslims. The first real rules of engagement were from the Muslims. He said they were developed by the fuqaha. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't want to see innocent people killed. He said, لا تقتلوا وريدا ولا امرأة. Right? Don't kill children, don't kill women, don't kill non-combatants. War was if you're forced to it, it's supposed to be between armies. It's not supposed to be, civilians. So here, breakdowns are not inevitable and not irretrievable. But if the process of disintegration is allowed to continue, it follows a common pattern in most instances. So when cultures break down, they follow patterns, and these patterns are discernible, and they've been identified. Ibn Khaldun identified them. Arnold Toynbee, who was heavily influenced by Ibn Khaldun, identified them. Kennedy identified them, the historian. Muhammad Iqbal. Malik bin Nabi. We have our own scholars as well, more modern scholars. But Toynbee studied 21 civilizations and found discernible patterns in what happened and why they fell apart. So he says that the masses become estranged from their leaders, who then try to cling to their position by using force as a substitute for their lost power of attraction. I trace the fragmentation of society into a dominant minority. So the dominant minority, Toynbee said that societies will work when they have a creative minority who, when you get new challenges, come with creative solutions. In other words, they don't use old solutions for new challenges because they have a creative capacity. But once you lose that creative minority becomes a dominant minority. And then you have an internal proletariat and an external proletariat consisting of the barbarians on its fringes. So you have, this would be in American situation for all these people that are trying to come in from the borders, like illegal immigrants. There's 20 million apparently. That's a lot of people. You see, so that's the external proletariat. But then you have the internal proletariat. All these people that can't afford gas, that can't afford groceries, people that can't. This is the internal proletariat. These are people that really suffer. And, Marx was not incorrect, but it was a perversion, because it's these people that recognize that there has to be change, that this situation is not tenable. But instead of having a spiritual force that actually, like the Prophet ﷺ who comes and who was with him, they were the poorest people. Those are the people that followed him. It was the notables. He did have some notables, but it wasn't. The notables fought him because they liked the system. It was serving them. But he removed that sickness in their hearts, the resentment, the desire for revenge, because he showed them this is all from God. It's all from God. Unsur akhaka zaliman aw mazluma. Help your brother, the oppressor and the oppressed. This is flipping the script. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ was able to do. If you don't have those people, and that's somebody like King did that in the civil rights, because a lot of the leaders were coming out of the religious traditions in this country. We Shall Overcome was actually a gospel. It was a hymn written by Charles Tindley. It's about the afterlife. It's not about dunya. So he says, and I sketched the social reactions of these diverse groups to the ordeal of disintegration. I also find corresponding psychological schism in the souls of people who happen to have been born in this unhappy age. So there's this schismatic, this kind of schizophrenic experience. Discordant psychic tendencies, which are perhaps always latent in human nature, now find free play. Furries. People that, and the Prophet talked about the people that would feel they were animals, because he said that part of the rahmah of his community is that people would not be transmogrified into animals physically, but they will feel like they're animals. So these poor young people that would rather be dogs than human beings. I mean, you have to have sympathy. People lose their bearings and rush down on blind alleys seeking escape. Greater souls detach themselves from life. Still greater souls. So a lot of the really, really important people that we need, they just begin to withdraw. Because they don't want to be part of it. They don't want to be part of all the sickness. And so they withdraw. And the Prophet permitted that. رَجُلٌ مُعْتَزِلٌ فِي بَادِيَتِهِ يُؤَدِّي حَقَّ اللَّهِ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ. The Prophet permitted that. Because some people can't take it. They need to protect themselves. But even greater souls detach themselves from life. Still greater souls try to transfigure life into something higher than mere life as we know it on earth, and sow the seeds of fresh spiritual advance, of trying to wake people's spirit up. You're human beings. You're not animals. You weren't meant to tear each other apart. جَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We just had these amazing Turkish people that have this Turkish restaurant in San Francisco presenting Turkish food to people that, this is life. Like the Muslims have always done that wherever they went. They brought beauty to their cultures. They enhanced people's experiences. Everywhere the Muslims went, they did that. And then people saw it. And now you're getting these poor people with tattoos that, saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Because it's like a way out. It's a way out. Because that is an expression of, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm not part of this. That impulse is to let people know, I'm not one of you. Because there's a recognition that something's wrong. But that we're not well. In our analysis of the breakdowns of civilization, we found that the ultimate criterion and fundamental cause of breakdown could be described as a loss of harmony, which leads to the forfeiture by a society of its power of self-determination. And we went on to examine some length the practical ways in which this loss of self-determination is revealed. In essence, the loss of harmony between elements which had formerly coexisted in a society as an integral whole leads inevitably to an outbreak of social discord. The broken down society is rent in two different dimensions simultaneously by the social schisms in which this discord is expressed. There are vertical schisms between geographically segregated communities and horizontal schisms between geographically intermingled but socially segregated classes. So you have, one of the amazing things about Islam is poor people and rich people live together. They live together. They pray together. In Medina, many times, because I was fortunate to spend several Ramadans in the Haramain. Many times I went to the wealthiest people and they fed all the poor people for iftar. They would invite them to their house and feed them. These people, there's people living right down the road that they don't even speak to the people, but if they don't even go to the stores. But if they do go to the stores, you see them, they don't even talk to these people. They're human beings. Have some human communication with people. But you get that, and then there's just class hatred. And then they hate the wealthy people. They just want to tear them down. Destroy them. And that's when the revolution comes. That's what's happened. They pull them out. Robespierre. And they always have the intellectuals from that class. They'll always have that. Che Guevara he was the son of a doctor. He became a doctor. The intellectuals always come from that class. Marx was, he was from that class. They'll be there to rile them up, get them angry. They're your problem. That's your problem. And that's Iblis. Because this is the problem. It's all perspective. On both sides. On both sides. So he says the horizontal schism of a society along lines of class is not only peculiar to civilizations, but is also a phenomenon because, in tribal societies, and trust me, there are rich Bedouin. Like, I lived in a Bedouin with Bedouin. There's Bedouin that have really nice tents, and there's ones that don't have very nice tents. I'm not making this up. So you're going to find this in every manifestation of human behavior. There's ones that the cows reproduce, and the other one, these cows die off. This is, نحن قسمنا بينكم معيشتكم في الحياة الدنيا. We divide the lots in life. And once you see that, then you recognize that this is about a test from Allah. وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضَكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً تَصْبِرُونَ وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ بَصِيرًا. We made some of you a trial for others. Ibn Qayyim says the rich are a trial for the poor are a trial for the rich. The scholar is a trial for the ignorant are a trial for the scholar. I mean, if you're living in a place where you have scholars and you're not benefiting from them, they're a ibtila for you. But if you're also living in a place where scholars aren't willing to educate the people, that's another tribulation for the scholar. Blacks are a tribulation for whites in this culture. Whites are a tribulation for blacks. Racism, it's a huge problem. It's still there. So he says, yeah, this is a very interesting, because, Thucydides, he really got to the heart of a lot. That's why he's still so important. He makes an analysis of the demonic evil impulses which were let loose in men's souls. Because once the fitna happens, that's the bonfire. Once it starts, you're dealing with demonic energy now. These people, it's like they're possessed. I mean, it's pretty clear. Because it's the bloodlust. And once that starts, it's very difficult. And then also there's an inability to just admit you're wrong. Like this was a mistake. People can't do that for some reason. It's a really bad quality of our species, generally. I mean, that's why some of the greatest people in history are the people that just recognize they're wrong. And they're great examples of that, of people that just, this was a mistake. At least admit it. But he says here, it was a competition of ingenuity in the elaboration of intrigue and the refinement of reprisals. The customary meaning of words was arbitrarily distorted to cover the conduct of those who employed them. Reckless irresponsibility was treated as courageous loyalty. Cautious reserve as cowardice, masked under a high-sounding name. Restraint as a cloak of poor-sightedness, poor-spiritedness. And the policy of reason as a policy of laissez-faire. A frenzied fanaticism was the popular ideal of conduct, while intrigue that took no risks was regarded as a legitimate method of self-defense. Violence of feeling was a warrant of honesty. Deprecation of violence a signal for suspicion. Success in intrigue was the test of intelligence, and detection of intrigue a testimonial to superior cleverness. While anyone who so shaped his policy as to dispense with such methods was pilloried as a nihilist towards his own group and a weakling in the face of their opponents. In short, approbation was reserved for those who forestalled their enemies in striking a blow and who implanted that suggestion in minds which had not previously conceived of it. The ties of party actually became closer than those of kinship because partisans were readier than kinsmen to throw themselves into an adventure at a moment's notice, and the associations in question were formed not to secure the benefits of established institutions, but to gain illegitimate advantages by violating them. Complicity in crime was a more effective sanction for loyalty to engagements than a solemn oath. A fair offer from opponents was received as a signal for practical precautions by the dominant party of the moment instead of evoking any generous response. The cause of this whole phenomenon, he's talking about the Peloponnesian War, the cause of this whole phenomenon was a thirst for power arising from the predatory and competitive impulses, impulses which engender conflict, from which passion is engendered in its turn. In all countries of Greece, the party leaders invented high-sounding catchwords and posed as the champions of political equality for the masses, of moderate conservatism, in order to make spoils out of the public interest which they served with their lips. In their unscrupulous struggle to gain upper hand over one another, they hesitated at nothing and surpassed themselves in the prosecution of their vendettas. So far from attempting to act within the bounds of moral right and national interest, they recognized no limitations on either side except caprice of the moment. They did not shrink from bringing themselves into power by verdicts immorally obtained against their opponents, if not by naked force, in order to satiate their momentary rancor. In fact, religion had lost its hold upon either party, and they relied upon their powers of misrepresentation to retrieve their good name whenever they had occasion to perpetuate an invidious action. Meanwhile, the moderate elements in every country were preyed upon by the extremists of both camps, partly for their refusal to take sides and partly out of resentment at the prospect of their survival. Thus, the class war plunged the Hellenic society into every kind of moral evil. I mean, you have to read these because this is it. This is over 2,000 years ago. And it's all the same. We're human beings. Human nature doesn't change. And that's why you have to read the book that's going to explain how this all works. That's why we were given Revelation. And the Bible will work. The Bible will work. There's a lot of truth in that book. If you have a book that has truth in it, but when you're just either feeling or thinking, if that's what you're relying on, feeling or thinking, you're going to be lost. That's what's going to happen. And you'll take down a lot of people if you're in positions of leadership. You will take down a lot of people, kill a lot of innocent. And God, on the day of judgment, there we believe it. There's a day. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Inna ummati ummatun marhuma. He said, my ummah is an ummah that the rahmah is on it. This ummah is an ummah marhuma. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, laysa laha fi dunya adhab. This is collective. It doesn't mean individuals. It means as an ummah. He said, there's not an adhab for this ummah in the akhirah. Adhabuha fi dunyaha. But the adhab, if you move away, فَلْيَحْذَرَ الَّذِينَ يُخَارِبُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَنْ تُصِيبُهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبُهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. That if you be forewarned that if you turn away from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you will be afflicted with fitna and a painful chastisement. So he said, عَذَابُهَا فِي دُنْيَاهَا الْفِتَن, civil strife, وَالزَّلَازِل, earthquakes, وَالْقَتَل, and death, murder. The Prophet ﷺ said that يَظْهَرَ الْحَرْجِ. They said, مَا الْحَرْجِ يَا Rasulullah? He said, الْقَتَل. He said, we have qatl today. He said, it won't be like that, qatl. He saw this. Other people, even in the 19th century, people saw what was coming. So we, as a community, we need tawbah. We need tawbah. And the whole globe needs tawbah. This whole globe, it needs tawbah, repentance, metanoia. There's all these beautiful names for it. Metanoia, the Greek, it's like change your mind, right? Metanoia, the nous. Yeah. Changing your mind. Altering the way you think. Which, in conclusion, these are random thoughts. I apologize. I was going to talk about Surah Ibrahim, and I was thinking I didn't even want to come and talk, because I just, I'm not going to, فَبِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. I'm not going to let shaitan, get in there. Not going to let him do it. He's going to try. but I'm not going to let him do it. He's not going to bring me down. Alhamdulillah. But we have to pray. We have to pray for the guidance of these leaders. That they do the right things. Because these are really, really horrific times for too many people, and it's the injustice of it is just overwhelming, as far as I can tell. It's overwhelming. But in any case, I wanted to bring your attention. Two amazing people passed away, and amazing people in my life, as well as the life of many, many, many others. But for me, there's really very poignant people that I love very deeply passed away this last week. One of the and they're both they embody the hadith لا حسد إلا في اثنتين. There's no envy except in two people. رجل أوتي الحكمة فيعلمها الناس. That a man who's been given wisdom. In a riwayat says Al-Qur'an. They're given the Qur'an, and they teach people. They teach people. And then a man who is given wealth, and he just spends day and night on others. And so, Sayyid Hisham al-Alusi, Allah yarhamuhu, passed away. And in many ways, this would not be here if it wasn't for Sayyid Hisham. And I'm just telling the truth. Yeah, this whole venture has a lot to do with this man also, but with Sayyid Hisham, because Sayyid Hisham, he really did help me. And then he was the one that incorporated Zaytuna. And then he bought the first building. He renovated that building, which was Zaytuna Institute. And the college it's actually still under Sayyid Hisham's, the original incorporation, because the three people were my wife Liliana, she was the treasurer, and Sayyid Hisham, and myself. We were the three that were on the board of trustees or whatever it was. But he was there, and he, mashallah, really helped build that community. And then we transitioned here. So he passed away. May Allah bless him, increase him, and elevate him. He's left behind some amazing young people. His son, Saif. Yeah, his son Saif he actually teaches here at Zaytuna. He's teaching linear algebra. So alhamdulillah. But wonderful young man. And inshallah he'll carry on the great work that his father did, because his father helped people all over the world. The second person, it was a great wise man who just, Sayyid Naqib al-Atas. And I was actually, maybe I'll do that if we have one more session before the end of Ramadan, if Allah gives us life. But Sayyid Naqib al-Atas, huge impact on me personally. Again, this is partly Sayyid Naqib al-Atas, is because he's the vision behind this. He really is. I read his early on. I got exposed to his work in the 70s, late 70s, and then his books on education, his Prolegomena on the metaphysics of Islam, his book Islam and Secularism. These are foundational, and if you read them, you'll see where a lot of my own thoughts, a lot of what I have taught is from him. Beautiful man, and just joyful person, really joyful. They took away everything. He was an architect, he was a calligrapher, he was a philosopher. He'd been an officer in the Malay army, studied at Sandhurst, had a PhD in traditional. He studied under Arbery, and Martin Lings were his advisors. But he did a PhD on the spirituality of one of the great saints of Malaysia. Brilliant man, but really joyful. Just, if you spent time with him, he had this wonderful laugh. And it was a laugh of joy. He exuded a kind of joie de vivre, like that, just joy of being alive, the gift of being alive. They took away everything. He would say, he'd just laugh about it. Like they took away his house, took away his college. He designed the whole thing, he built everything, and they took it all away from him. Just, for him, it's all from Allah. So alhamdulillah, no problem. So may Allah bless both of them. May Allah give them high maqams, inshallah, in the akhirah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our fasting and forgive us our just shortcomings and any sinfulness, and inshallah again, bring peace. We really need to pray for peace. Salaam qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Salaam qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Salaam qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. The first thing they hear in paradise, when they come in, the very first thing they just start saying over and over again, Salam, Salam. And Shaykh Abdullah, he said, the only good thing about war is when it comes, everybody yearns for peace. When you have peace, we're just ingrates. We forget about it. What a blessing peace is. Alhamdulillah, subhanakallah, alhamdulillah, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr.